start our debate. And the first question is going to go to Ms. Donald. Ms. Donald, both of the campaigns have talked about on local issues the idea of sex education. And you in particular had stated your own sexual preference in your candidate convention speech. Could you please tell me why your party is going to best address the problems that you see versus sex education?
My party is going to best address these problems because I personally have experience facing this discrimination, facing LGBTQ discrimination, and I know the effects of not having inclusive sexual education that describes how sex functions for all genders, for everybody, for all types of sex. That's something that's important to me, to have education, so we can make sure that everybody knows, first of all, how to have safe sex, how to make sure that they're doing everything safely, to make sure that nobody gets STDs, that nobody has unwanted pregnancies. That's something that's very important to me.
All right, candidate Venetia, any response?
Yes, so we also believe that sex ed and reforming the sex education that we are receiving at East is important because it is important to promote abstinence, but we also believe that it is also important to inform people on contraceptions, especially LGBTQ sex education also. So we agree basically similarly on these topics.
Well, I want to follow up because you just mentioned the idea of abstinence and you said it's important. Ms. Donald in her platform says abstinence-only sex education programs are ineffective. Do you disagree with that?
Okay, so I believe in our society currently they are ineffective, but that's what we should that's what we are trying to achieve. But we should educate our students on contraceptions and how to use them and how to avoid getting STDs.
Okay. The next issue that I want to bring up is both of you talked about in your platforms some local issues, and they have an overlapping here about dealing with the inequality that is common in the area and tying to affordability in housing. So, Ms. Venetia, this next question is for you. Can you explain to the audience and those watching how you and your party are best going to address the issue of housing in Chapel Hill?
So in Chapel Hill and RTP, we would like to implement a trial right to housing because currently in the United States, 86.9% of housing is currently being used, but 13.1% is currently vacant. So we can see that there are abandoned households and vacant homes that we can try to use to help limit the amount of homeless people we have in our society. Along with that, that would also help boost the economy because people would be able to focus less on trying to get housing, rather focus more on trying to find jobs, get a better education, and that will help our economy.
A quick follow-up, how are you going to fund this right to housing?
Well, since it's a trial, what we plan on doing is allocating some of our funds locally and trying to place those funds more on the right to housing. So we believe that it's a trial, so we're going to see how it works, but we believe in the long run that the economy will boost from this rather than decline.
Okay, Ms. Donald, any response?
One of the most important issues facing Chapel Hill right now is the fact that we have so many people in Chapel Hill who can't afford their homes, who have moved 4 or 5 times in the past year because they just can't afford where they live. The president of the Chamber of Commerce in Chapel Hill said that we suffer from Chapel Hill syndrome, from thinking that there are no problems in Chapel Hill. What we need to do is we need to expand the affordable housing program, we need to expand the rent-to-own program, and we need to stop real estate companies from buying apartments in apartment buildings and reserving them only for students, because that prevents the older population in Chapel Hill, the people who are living in Chapel Hill, from being able to afford their own housing.
Okay. My next question is for you, Ms. Donald. Can you speak to what the Durham County government has just implemented with respect to wage and family leave?
I'm sorry, could you give me more information on that?
So I will repeat the question. Can you speak to what the Durham County government has just passed in terms of wages and family leave? And do you agree with that position?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, Ms. Minocha?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so now that we've established that, we'll go back to it. So giving more detail on that, the Durham County government has just passed a law saying that minimum wage should be $15 an hour for all county workers and has granted them paid family and medical leave for 12 weeks. So with that now as background, do you have any comment on this policy?
It's definitely a good thing. Studies show that the average family of four needs a living wage of $11.06 to be able to survive. So a $15 minimum wage is definitely something that I support. In addition, paid family leave is something that, first of all, it supports the children. It allows the children to grow up. Studies have shown that children whose parents are able to take family leave grow up to be more intelligent, have better bonds with their family, are less likely to get involved with problematic things. So having 12 weeks of paid family leave is important.
Ms. Minocha?
We agree that, our party agrees that this plan would actually benefit our society because we believe that we do need to increase the minimum wage and family leave pay is extremely important. So we do agree on this aspect of this issue.
Okay. Ms. Minocha, recently there have been a number of demonstrations at UNC, at Jordan High School, and at East Carolina University regarding shootings that have taken place in this state. Could you talk to us about the response of ECU in particular to the demonstrations that were posed at their school, and whether or not you agree with them?
So I know that there have been protests all around the state about these shootings. Some of them have been violent, some of them have not been violent. We do believe that that we need to make changes in our current policies and police reform and police reform on how we address these issues. But we understand the violent protests that have currently happened, and we understand why they feel like they're justified, but we don't personally advocate for violence in these protests.
So you're saying there was violence that took place at ECU?
Well, not particularly in these schools, but in some other places there has been violence.
Okay, can you speak to the ECU issue, the decision made by administration in response to the protests that were there?
Not particularly.
Okay, Ms. Donald, can you speak to that?
I cannot.
Okay, in that case, let me once again, there were protests, just like at UNC, where marching band members had taken a knee on the field. You had similar actions taken at ECU, and ECU's administration in response has decided not to allow further protests and to not allow these actions to take place while they are representing the school. With that being said, do you agree with this decision by the administration?
I disagree because I believe that all students should have the right to protest for what they believe in, especially since this is such a pressing issue in our society. They should definitely have the right to protest in non-violent forms to express their views.
Ms. Donald, any other response?
I agree with my opponent. Everybody has the right to protest, and these protests are justified. These peaceful, nonviolent protests are justified because when a black man is killed for reading a book in a car, that's just unacceptable. That's something that we need to make our voices heard about.
Okay, thank you very much. Continuing along with issues in the state, you both have noted that you want to do something about education funding. Can you please talk to us with specifics about where education funding currently is, Ms. Donald, and what you would plan to do about that and how you would pay for it?
So education funding, and in particular teacher pay, is far too low. It's far lower than it needs to be. I know that I believe it's in return for giving up tenure, teachers get a $5,000 bonus. That's something that's unacceptable. That cannot be an option. We have to increase teacher pay all across the board for teachers, instead of just saying, yeah, we can fire you, but at least you get $5,000. We cannot do that. Funding for education would go to increasing supports for increasing teacher pay across the board, across all teachers and all schools. In addition to that, it would go to supporting classes that often don't get a lot of support, that aren't seen as necessary, such as arts classes, such as AP classes, such as classes that aren't as supported by the state.
So just to follow up, you don't believe AP classes are supported by the state?
That was I misspoke a little bit there. I mean like classes that are less encouraged, that are taken by fewer students.
Ms. Minocha, any comment on that?
Well, so personally, we also believe in raising teacher pay by taxing currently the rich in North Carolina. Along with that, we believe that we need to reallocate the funds that we give and to our schools because a lot of language departments are not being funded as well. I can speak from personal experience. I am currently taking AP French right now, and originally last year they had planned on having only one class for about more than 30 students to take AP French, and that's AP French is focused a lot on speaking. And so what that would do is decrease the chance we would have to speaking. Now, following up on your comment about AP classes, I am currently in multiple AP classes, and what I believe is that AP classes, my AP classes are currently very small and very well funded. So I think we should reallocate funds on those funds on like language departments and art programs.
Okay. Another issue that you both have written about in your platforms at the state level is House Bill 2. And certainly the attention about the restriction on individuals to be able to use a bathroom with the gender that they identify with has gotten most of the news. So Ms. Minocha, my question for you is, what are some of the other provisions in HB2 that were passed in that bill, and do you agree with them?
So my knowledge in HB2 is that HB2 it violates rights against LGBTQ communities by making transgender people use the bathroom of their birth. So what I believe is that we should revoke HB2 and along with that add a mandatory single occupancy bathroom so those who don't believe in revoking HB2 law and those who believe those transgender people who don't believe in using either bathroom have another option.
So just to follow up, can you name another provision within the bill besides the gender restriction?
I'm sorry.
Okay, Ms. Donald, any follow-up?
HB2 not only does it restrict transgender people's access to the bathroom that they want to use, it also prevents and removes anti-discrimination laws. There was an ordinance passed by the city of Charlotte that prevented housing and workplace discrimination against the LGBTQ community, and HB2 repealed that and made it so no city, no municipality can pass such a anti-discrimination law.
Yes, that is correct. And for all of you who have not had a chance to see it, The Daily Show did a nice segment about selling barbecue to individuals in this community as a result of that. It also, just by the way, places limits on local counties to raise the minimum wage. So I guess the last couple things before we move on to our next segment, we have a number of elections coming up. Ms. Donald, can you tell us who is running for the United States Senate and what candidate you would support and why?
So the two candidates for the United States Senate in North Carolina are Deborah Ross and Richard Burt. I support Deborah Ross because she is running as a Democrat and my values closely align with hers.
Okay. Ms. Minocha, your question is there are two candidates running for governor. Can you tell us who those are and who you support and why?
So the Republican is Pat McCrory, and I am not certain of the name of the Democratic candidate, but I believe that I would support their views more than because I'm very liberal.
Okay. Last but not least, this question is to both of you. Can you name one other individual running for statewide office? Ms. Donald?
David Price is running for the House of Representatives.
Okay. But that's actually for a federal position. So can you name another statewide office holder?
I believe it's Josh Stein who's running for Attorney General.
That is correct.
I cannot answer that question.
Okay. So we're going to move on now to the next segment that I said, national and international issues. In this segment, I want to have some discussion about what is going on and in the minds of many people. Hurricane Matthew is currently out in the Atlantic. Ms. Minocha, can you talk to us a little bit about what you know has already happened in Haiti as a result of this hurricane, and how you would, as president, respond to any affected areas in this country for any damage that is suffered.
So currently we can see that Hurricane Matthew is moving up the coast. I believe that we need to provide aid to Haiti and other places that have been currently extremely damaged by this hurricane.
Do you know what's happened in Haiti?
Not so.
All right, Ms. Donald, any response?
In Haiti, the South Shore has been almost completely destroyed. There are almost 300 people that have died because of the storm. Entire towns have been flooded, homes have been washed away. It's completely devastated. In terms of what I would do as president to prepare the U.S. for this, I believe President Obama's declaration and the governor's declarations of states of emergency is good. The evacuations of people living near the coast is good and in a way to prepare for it.
Okay. My next question in terms of national issues is recently this week in the news it was announced that an individual who was working for a private contractor, Booz Allen, in connection with the National Security Agency, has been arrested for potentially removing classified information from the National Security Agency. This is also shortly on the heels of the release of a movie about Edward Snowden. So my question to you, Ms. Donald, is what is your opinion about Mr. Snowden and his actions, and in larger the actions of our government with regards to searches and pertaining to national security issues?
I believe that in government, especially within the NSA, we need to have more transparency about its actions. Edward Snowden, while I believe he could have released the information in a more safe way, in a way that didn't necessarily put people at risk, I believe that he was working with a good motivation. He had good intentions. He was trying to promote transparency within the government.
Okay, Ms. Minocha, any response?
So we believe that we need to focus. We agree with the Modern Equity Party. We also believe that we need to look towards reform. We need to look towards more, like basically having a harsher law on probable cause and having more substance and having more evidence before we can actually use probable cause for searches.
So could you just, when you say a harsher law on probable cause, you want to make the standard harder or easier to prosecute someone like Mr. Snowden?
I think we should make it harder.
So next, both of you talked about issues of race on our national stage. And the Modern Equity Party framed it as systemic racism. The Future Party talked more specifically about mass incarceration. Ms. Minocha, this question goes to you. How would you deal with the discrimination that people of color face in this country? And can you elaborate on what your policy is with respect to mass incarceration?
So we can see that mass incarceration is currently an extremely big problem in our society. So we believe that we should look towards police reforms, making it mandatory to wear body cameras, along with reforming police education by requiring them to, instead of learning how to shoot to kill, rather learn to shoot to disarm. We need to reform we need to make police education and police academy longer, so that people who aim to become police officers don't cause many problems that they currently do, and that body cameras will help see how we can the actual situation and how we can address that situation.
So let me just follow up though, but I wanted to talk about your policy on mass incarceration. So I have police and body cameras, but can you talk about who is populated in our prisons and what are we going to do about that, and what actions would you take to try to reduce the discrimination in this space?
So African Americans are an extreme population in our prisons because we have a lot of private prisons are used because people use them for economic purposes, along with putting them using them for helping big corporations with work purposes, and we believe that we need to ban private prisons so that we don't focus more on this economic benefit that we get from prisons, but rather actually looking at the problem and seeing what the crime was.
All right, Ms. Donald, any response?
So similar to Anisha's positions, we do need to remove for-profit prisons, private prisons. 1 in 3 black men our age, born in 2001, will go to prison at some point in their life, at the current rate we're at, and that's a huge problem. That's something we need to fix. To do so, for police officers, we need implicit bias trainings and body cameras to make sure that they are held accountable and that they know what the effects of their actions. And in addition to that, we need bias trainings for judges and everybody involved in our judicial system to make sure that we're not sending people of color to prison just because of the color of their skin.
Okay. The next question I have for both of you relates to gun control. Both of you have discussed ways to address guns in our society. Ms. Donald, this question is for you. The Future Party in their platform has a position of, quote, ban all guns. Do you agree with this decision? And is this something that the federal government should take up?
I think that the idea to ban all guns is not necessarily a bad one, but that cannot be our first step. Our first step has to be to ban semi-automatic weapons, because the idea of banning all guns means to repeal the Second Amendment, and that's not legislation that we're going to get passed soon. We need to pass legislation to ban semi-automatic weapons, because those are the ones used most often in mass shootings, and to prevent mass shootings, we need to get guns out of the hands of people who want to do harm, and that's something we have to do quickly.
Okay.
Okay, so we agree that we need to do something about gun reformation, but the thing is that not only mass shootings occur because of with guns, also IPV, which stands for Intimate Partner Violence victims, it's 12 times more likely for there to be a death in an IPV case when guns are involved. Along with that, guns are used as a common mode for suicide, and there are multiple and thousands of accidental shootings every year of innocent children due to guns. So I don't believe that a gun control currently would actually fulfill stopping these problems that we're currently facing in our society, because guns, some handguns fall under the fact of semi-automatic weapons, but some of them do not. So we believe rather that we need to have a full gun control, full gun ban, because that will help stop the IPV problems we're having, the suicide rates, and decline the homicide rates. Along with that, we believe that, and currently in the Second Amendment, these amendments can be revoked, they can be changed, and along with that, they were written in the 1700s. So basically, if we're going to follow everything that they state in the 1700s, our life would be a lot different. We need to look towards what's currently going on in our society.
I'm gonna stop you there and interrupt. So what does it take to repeal an amendment?
Okay, so it has to be passed by the Congress to repeal an amendment, along with all of the overmajority rule for support on repealing an amendment from the Congress and House of Representatives.
Is that it?
I'm not 100% sure, I think.
Ms. Donald, do you know?
This might be wrong. Is it you have to have 2/3 support of Congress to repeal an amendment?
And
I'm not sure.
okay. We'll definitely cover that this year. I want to ask one more national question before we move on. Both of you have talked about economic issues. Who did I ask the last question to? It was Ms. Donald, so Ms. Minocha. What would you say, how would you evaluate the current status of our economy? And based on that evaluation, what do you think needs to be changed?
So I think that since the recession that happened in 2008, our economy has been doing better, but we believe in increasing the minimum wage along with breaking up monopolies, because currently monopolies do control a large portion of the products we release into the public. So we believe in supporting small businesses along with gradually increasing the minimum wage to $12. So one of our plans is to look to give small businesses advantages when selling their products over big monopolies to help with the outsourcing problem that we have.
So just a quick follow-up. You earlier said in this debate you supported, once you found out what it was, the Durham position of raising minimum wage for county workers to $15 an hour.
Yeah.
So why is your national plan only $12 an hour?
Because currently we don't want to we want to gradually get to $12 first, and second, we don't want we might see drastic causes of inflation if we increase dramatically. Currently, states can add a higher minimum wage than what the nation provides. So Durham would be doing that, would be following that policy, but we believe that nationally, $12 in graduate increase would be beneficial.
Ms. Donald, any response?
So the current state of this economy is along the baseline of how it has been for 2016. We created 156,000 jobs in September with a 5% unemployment rate, which is about, on average, about how it's been for 2016. So I think that keeping it stable is a good thing, although it could have been better. To improve our economy, because of course it can be improved, I too support small businesses, support plans that encourage small businesses, because small businesses typically created about 8 million new jobs, while corporations eliminated 4 million. In addition, I support a $12 minimum wage, although local municipalities and states can create a greater minimum wage.
All right, we're going to move on to some international issues now. Ms. Donald, this question is for you. What happened yesterday with the British pound, and what event is that tied to?
I'm not sure. Does it have something to do with Brexit?
Potentially, yes.
I'm not sure.
What is Brexit?
Brexit is the referendum that Britain signed, that Britain has passed, that it says it's going to leave the European Union. It has to leave by, I believe it is May 2019. It has said that it doesn't want to be part of the European Union. It doesn't want to have the tariffs on outside trade, and it just doesn't. It has left the European Union,
Okay.
or it's working towards that.
You can't answer about what happened to the pound. Ms. Minocha, do you know what happened to the pound?
I am going to infer that it decreased in value.
Yes, significantly, right?
Significant,
It
yes.
dropped by more than 10% last night alone. So moving on, next international issue for you. It was just announced who's going to be the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Can you, Ms. Minocha, tell me who that individual is, or at least what country that person is from, and why they would be receiving it?
I believe that, I'm not sure, and one of the nominees was somebody, I don't know their name exactly, but they were helping with rape cases across the world and helping women who had been victims of that. I'm not sure if if they're the nominee, if they are the current holder of the prize, or what country they're from. I'm sorry.
No.
I believe it is the president of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos, because of his attempt to negotiate a peace treaty between the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, ending a 52-year civil war.
That is correct. Ms. Donald, can you talk to me about the actions of President Duarte in the Philippines and whether or not you agree with them?
I cannot, I'm sorry.
Ms. Minocha?
I'm sorry.
Okay. President Duarte is a dictator, totalitarian leader who is currently engaging in a war on drugs in the country, which has led to more than 3,000 extrajudicial killings, drawing the ire of the international community, and has also publicly sworn at the President of the United States, causing him not to come to a visit that was previously scheduled. I'm going to assume your answer to both of those is no, and we will move on. Next, both of you have written extensively about climate change and the need for it. Ms. Minocha, what has recently gone into effect regarding climate change, and do you think it has gone far enough?
Could you clarify on what policy you are discussing?
That's what I want you to identify, whether or not you agree with it.
I'm sorry, I don't know what policy you're discussing, but I can talk more about climate change reforms that we need in our society. Okay, so we believe that our goal is to transfer to 100% renewable power and renewable energy. So currently we're relying on coal plants, we are relying on also natural gas plants and nuclear plants. But the thing is that people think nuclear plants are environmentally friendly, but alone in the United States, 75% of those plants have leaked tritium or cesium-137, which are radioactive nuclides that are getting into our drinking water. We live only 20 miles from Sharon Harris Wake power plant, so if there was ever a meltdown to occur, we would be in danger. We need to have better plans focusing on, because nuclear plants can be terrorist targets. Along with that, nuclear plants around the world also help with nuclear proliferation, which is basically increasing the amount of nuclear weapons countries have hold, and they also cause.
I'm going to have to stop you there. All right, Ms. Donald, do you have an identification on what recently has gone into effect, and do you agree with the positions that are taken there?
Well, I know that India has recently signed the Paris Climate Change Agreement. I was not aware that it had gone into effect. What I had read was that you need countries that produce 55% of the emissions, and I believe that India only brings the total up to 52%.
Well, with the agreement subsequent to India, it is now we've reached past
So
both
we've reached that.
both 55 countries and 55%. So it is in effect. Do you agree with how they are doing with climate change, or what would you do differently based on what's in the treaty?
I think it's definitely a step in the right direction to have an international agreement to slow the effects of climate change, to reverse climate change. That's something that we definitely need. That's something that I approve of.
Okay. So we're getting closer to the end here, so I want to just wrap up. What would you say is the most pressing issue on the international stage? This question is for Ms. Donald. And also, what is Aleppo?
Okay, I'll answer your first question. The most pressing issue to me on the international stage is women's rights. Across the world, in hundreds of countries, women do not have the same rights as men. There are millions of women who are illiterate, who don't have access to the proper education they need. There are women who don't have access to the health care they need. There are women who don't have access to the abortions that they need. There are women who are raped daily. There are women in poverty all across the world. And this is something that we need to change. This is something that is a very important issue.
So you think that's more important than, say, international relations with Russia and increasing tensions between our two countries?
I think that there are a lot of important issues. I think that it's not so much that there is one issue that's so far above the rest of the issues. It's that women's rights are something that are part of all the issues.
Okay, and what is Aleppo?
Aleppo is the capital of Syria.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Minocha, any response?
Okay, so we believe that there are many pressing issues in our society, but the biggest issue is the environment and climate change that's currently occurring, because if we look at it, if we don't do something, recognizing that climate change is occurring is not enough. We actually have to implement laws and policies to change the direction and divert the path that we are currently going on, because if we don't do something right now, there might not be many future generations to take care of it, and we don't want future generations to look down on us for the mistakes that we have made. So I believe that the climate change is the most important issue that we're currently facing, and I'm allowed to
What would be quickly, because we got to move on. Yeah.
So I believe that women's rights are extremely important also, but in some cultures and customs, it's law that women aren't allowed to drive and women aren't allowed to receive an education. So I'm kind of intrigued on how you plan on going to those countries and convincing them to do the opposite.
Okay, actually, I want to ask you just quickly as a follow-up. Your opponent gave us what Aleppo is in terms of the capital. What did President Assad just announce with respect to what's happening in Aleppo?
I'm not sure, I'm sorry.
Do you know, Ms. Donald?
I know that the U.S. and Russia have ceased talks because Russia has been working with the Syrian armed forces and bombing Aleppo.
Okay, so this morning he just offered sanctuary for anyone if they would give up the city, because he plans on retaking it. I actually want to, there were questions posed by each of the campaigns, so I'm going to try to get them in quickly. You just raised this question, so your campaign actually posed and wanted me to ask, are you, and this ties to the comment you just made, are you culturally aware, and what does it mean to be privileged?
Sorry, you said that I'm my campaign?
No, no.
No.
Ms. Minocha's campaign, so posing it to you, so building off of her comment there about the differences for women around the world.
I do think that I'm culturally aware. I try to research and learn about different cultures. I did that as preparing for this project. Just to rebut Anisha's statements about how there are laws that prevent women from driving and women from getting educations, that's not something that we can allow to stand.
Okay.
So how are you gonna solve
Well,
this
hold
problem?
up. Thank you. So, in return, the question, interestingly enough, as we see this developing, that you wanted me to ask this side is that given how are you going to deal with the question of sexual assault in the U.S. and around the world, and to prevent discrimination against minority groups, in particular the LGBTQ community?
So, first addressing sexual assault, we believe that currently our gun ban will help to address that because IPV currently in the United States is heavily correlated with deaths from guns. Also, we believe in providing laws and policies to avoid human trafficking. For example, we want to re-educate our police on how to be aware of signs of potential trafficking around their cities and locally. Along with that, we want to have increased background checks on dating and other sites that potentially could be
Dating sites, so like private third-party sites, you want to have a background check?
Like yes, because a lot of them lead.
How is the government going to enforce that?
Well, we believe that we should make it mandatory for those sites for them to be allowed to
Okay.
have.
I'm going to stop you there. So I want to do 2 rapid-fire civics questions related to the job that you're about to take. Ms. Donald, what article of the Constitution deals with the presidency?
That is Article 2 of the Constitution that establishes the executive branch and
Okay.
the electoral
Oh,
college.
fantastic. And Ms. Minocha, in Article 2, there's an oath of office where you're said to uphold the Constitution. What are the first 3 words of the preamble to the Constitution?
I'm sorry.
All right. And then the last question I have before the bell. This is brought in from the press. I want to make sure that they got this is an answer. This is the last one. Okay. I'll ask it quickly. How do you plan on breaking up big companies when places like Google, Apple, and Amazon are already colluding by trying to keep wages down for workers?
So we believe that we want to address more monopolies who have raised prices for products, along with.
All right, I gotta stop there.